Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for now Week 12 of the 2025 fantasy football season. For over the course of the next hour, we're talking all things fantasy football related to your rosters. Of course, preparing for the upcoming waiver wire transactions we'll be making tomorrow, and of course, potentially making trades for those of you who are in a league in which your deadline has not passed. Of course, we're all doing this in order to set ourselves up for success for this upcoming week, as we have 4 teams on bye: the Chargers, Broncos, Miami Dolphins, and Washington Commanders. With all those teams out, of course, it leaves us in a position to which hopefully we have enough players at our disposal to capture victories. I hope you guys are doing well on this wonderful Monday. Quite the underwhelming game for a Monday night matchup. Again, it still did get, up to the overall volume of points which was anticipated, but it wasn't as competitive as we once could have potentially thought, as the Raiders have just really, their running game did not even get off the ground. It didn't get off the plane, and they were at home. So just that alone, it didn't get off the bus. I don't know what you want to put it as, but that was quite the underwhelming game. But this weekend was a lot of just one-sided, the fact of the matter is, I see Freddie in the chat right now. The fact that the Chargers got mollywopped 35-6 is beyond me. I couldn't believe that. Some of the games, the fact that Bryce Young and Brissett did what they did yesterday, unbelievable. Just some of the most ridiculously out of nowhere performances, to where Brissett has put his name in the record books. And of course, Bryce Young, who couldn't get the team to, allow him to throw the ball more than 30 times in a game, comes away with 45 attempts and 400 plus yards. An incredible week for some of these overall circumstances. And then on the other side, we have, the unfortunate nature of injuries. Goodness gracious, the volume of injuries that took place yesterday is just, Josh Jacobs, number one. While the intro music was rolling, I know many of you guys had asked, Andrew, what's the overall situation with Josh Jacobs? According to what I have read, it's currently a knee contusion, and he's most likely going to probably, I would say, miss 1 week. They did say, the report that I recently read was that there's a possibility, just a possibility, in which he could play this week, depending on how much he practices. I don't expect him to practice him. I don't expect him to give him any run this week. But then again, they are taking on Minnesota, division rival. They want to stay up in the top of that division because, again, they're going to be taking on members of the NFC North for 3 straight weeks here. It might be an interesting choice here, but Emmanuel Wilson certainly of value. Another member of that Green Bay Packers team that is certainly benefiting from the absence of Josh Jacobs' his most recent game was, of course, Christian Watson, who's today's live stream thumbnail. Of course, many of other injuries that have taken place. We'll keep that monitored as we continue on. But again, we're going to be answering questions here for the next hour. If you guys have any questions, make sure you go ahead and either type it in the live chat or send it in via Super Chat in order to claim priority. Whichever way you want to go ahead and send in that question, as long as you include your scoring format, the more context you provide, the easier it'll be for me and, of course, other members of this community to be able to help answer your questions as we go into this week. Okay, thank you very much. Walker woke up. Yeah, Charlene, finally, Kenneth Walker. Besides the fact that he had a touchdown earlier in the game called back due to a holding, and then he finally scores a touchdown later on in the game, we'll take it. Again, it's hopefully Kenneth Walker can stretch the final kind of, leg of this season and really just lead us to the promised land. Just like in the same way in which Travion Henderson has pretty much changed his whole season. Prior to week 8, or actually no, prior to week 9, from weeks 1 through 8, Travion Henderson was the number 42 overall running back. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, the efforts in which he has put forth now has him in a half PPR as RB19 overall. So just to put into perspective, it only takes a couple weeks to shift your entire season. Just got to hope it's now. Now or never at this point for many of us. Okay, let's go ahead and let's pop open some of these super chats that were sent in. I'm going to go ahead and pop it up on screen so we can get to those immediately. We have the first question from Jeb. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It says, would you take Jamar Chase and Chase Brown for Amon-Ra and Travis Etienne? I'm 8-3 with Etienne and Ra. I just received this offer. Okay, so we already know that Jamar Chase, not injured, but in fact is going to be suspended for 1 game. That is probably one of the most expensive suspensions I have ever seen. The number that I saw earlier today was upwards of $400,000, almost $500,000 per game check for someone like Jamar Chase, and that is now void. So that is an unfortunate reality. But in the case of your situation, considering Joe Burrow is expected to return either week 13 or 14, and because you're 8-3, it purely just becomes a matter of if you can survive this week in the absence of Jamar Chase, continue on to pick up at least 2 more victories here, get the first round bye as the number 1 or 2 seed in your league, then at that point, I do believe that the more valuable duo of the group here, technically speaking, should be Chase Brown and Jamar Chase. But again, if you're in a position to which, other teams are on your heels on that 8-3 record, I doubt it. But if if losing Jamar Chase this week, theoretically speaking, was a problem, then again, you can go elsewhere and just keep what you have. Because look, Amon-Ra is a great player. And even though he came away with only 2 receptions this most recent week, he still had double-digit targets. He still doesn't have Sam Laporta in the mix going forward for the next 3 weeks here, considering the IR stint. But yes, if I had the choice in terms of rest of season, which duo would I prefer? Technically, with Joe Burrow expected to return, hopefully, fingers crossed, they don't shut him down. Again, there's always the sketchiness there, right? Having taken that loss, what are they, 3-6 now as an as a team this after this week? 3-6, you lose to the Patriots this week, you're 3-7. Sure, there's a chance that Burrow comes back in the final 6 games of the season. They rip off 6 victories, and then they try to push for a wild card seed. That's my hope. That's what I would hang my hat on. You don't have to make this trade, but technically, I do believe that this duo is more valuable long term, assuming everything breaks in the right direction in terms of Burrow's health. Thank you. Eric M sends in a question. Eric, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Eric says, traded Alec Pierce for Judkins. My receivers are JSN, Puka, Sutton, and Tez Johnson. My running backs are Bucky, White, Walker, and Stevenson. Good trade. Or the Browns offense concerning? Yeah, I think the Browns offense in the most recent production of Judkins is quite concerning. I mean, just frankly, Judkins has had 4 of the last 5 games of less than 10 fantasy points in a half PPR scoring format. Now, I don't think you're going to regret making this decision because, I mean, genuinely speaking, you have JSN and Puka as your 1 and 2, and finding another wide receiver, whether it is between Sutton or Tez or someone on the waiver wire, is going to be very easy to accomplish. And being able to at least give yourself a little bit more structure at RB is fine. I mean, with Stevenson's injury, with the fact that Rashad Wright has pretty much worked himself out of a job, you now have 3 solid running backs, assuming Bucky comes back. But if Bucky was to miss another week, I think this trade in terms of bringing in Judkins and pairing him up with Walker in the meanwhile, I think is very much so of need for your roster. So I think this is a correct decision to make in terms of being able to recoup some potential running back value going forward for the remainder of the season. Now, if we specifically look at the upcoming schedule for the Browns, let's go ahead and let's pull up Judkins here. In terms of the potential of the Browns schedule here, taking on Las Vegas this upcoming week could be of an advantageous nature. Then you have San Francisco. Don't love the matchup as a whole because I think they'll get probably boat raced out the building. But then again, if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland beat the San Francisco 49ers last season, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have Tennessee in week 14, which is a great matchup. Then Chicago week 15, I don't mind that at all. Buffalo can't stop the run week 16, and then Pittsburgh week 17. I think there are advantageous positions for Judkins going forward. So I like the trade there, Eric. Thank you. LZ7 sends a question. Says, what's up? Questions in the chat. Thank you, LZ. Says, I'm currently 5-6 within a full PPR flex league. 10-man league. Baker, Judkins, RJ Harvey, Chase, JSN, Theo, Vidal. You probably had one of the worst weeks you could possibly have. Brother, I don't know if any of these players put over 10 fantasy points for you. Jamar Chase did nothing. RJ did nothing. Judkins did nothing. JSN, ultimately, in terms of all things considered, that offense just was not their normal selves. Yet, JSN still managing to be relevant. Imagine the next time they take on the LA Rams. What is that? In week 16. I suppose when they're in Seattle, it's going to be a little bit of a different experience in my mind. JSN could even get better there. But then Theo Johnson was very much so underwhelming. So was Vidal because the entire offense took the night off. And then Sutton, of course, still MIA, just completely missing in action. In regards to your bench going forward, obviously Dart is hopefully going to be healthy. Irving's hopefully going to be healthy. Manunga has kind of, sneakily been really good as late stealing touchdowns. And then, of course, Garrett Wilson on the IR. Hampton can hopefully come back for you and kind of rebirth your running back position and flex position after the bye here. All right, so it says trade away Chase this week. Get it in the wide receiver or depth. In regards to a 5-6 record in a 10-team league, if you're trying to make the fantasy playoffs, I'd like to suppose or like to assume that you can do so in making the final seed here with probably 6 wins if you're lucky. Otherwise, I think 7's going to need to get it done. And considering we have week 12, 13, 14, only 3 games, you'll have to win 2 of the next 3. I wouldn't mind the idea of moving Chase in this circumstance in order to ensure yourself a better chance to victory this week. If you can make a trade in which you can get back a player that isn't of a significant downgrade, for example, if you can get an Amon-Ra, I'm perfectly happy with that. Just in the same way in which somebody asked earlier, it was Jeb, in fact, had asked if I should trade away, Amon-Ra and ETN for Chase and Chase Brown. I think the idea of making that swap for wide receiver is very much so comparable to where I wouldn't feel bad making that trade, but additionally, I also get the value in the meanwhile to be able to kind of set myself up for success. As for trading for depth, I don't know if you need to per se, but again, you do have a lot of bye weeks. So with RJ out, Vidal out, and Sutton out, and if, for example, Irving was not to play this week, and ultimately you might need to go for a depth play as well. So I think the depth play may in fact also be pretty relevant if you can get like a 1 for 2. So you're sending away Chase and getting back 2 players in order to kind of fill in for wide receiver and running back in that circumstance. Thank you, LZ. All right, moving on. We had a question from the S-Box who says, in a full PPR, I'm 5 and 6, holding on to my number 1 waiver for weeks. Do I finally use it on Emmanuel Wilson? My team is in the chat. Okay, so it depends on if you have Josh Jacobs. Says, my team is Stafford Nix, Genty, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Monungai, A.J. Brown, Flowers, Washington, Franklin, Kittle, and Kincaid. Okay, so in this current circumstance, based on the information that I have been relayed, and I'll go ahead and I'll read it to you right now, just so we're all on the same page in regards to the status of Josh Jacobs. So via Rotoballer of 5 hours ago, says the Green Bay Packers head coach Matt LaFleur said the running back Josh Jacobs suffered a knee contusion in Week 11 over the win against the New York Giants on Sunday, according to Matt, I don't know what is that? Schneidman, yes, of The Athletic. Injured reserve is not a consideration, and it is possible that Jacobs could be ready to play in Week 12 on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings, the division rival. There have been reports suggesting that the 27-year-old is week to week, as it will depend how much he practices this week. So we'll keep an eye on the status from Wednesday through Friday. So there's a chance that Emmanuel Wilson is just a insurance policy pickup for those of you who have Jacobs. I think we'll get a little bit more information by tomorrow. And once we've gotten that indication, I think it'll be a little bit more of an understanding as to where this is going to go. Obviously, it's a lot better than what we initially anticipated or potentially could have seen take place. I'm glad to see that it's not as serious as it could have been because, again, Drake London's injury, he's already been designated out for this upcoming week, which is a little bit of a concerning injury of sorts. So there are many of ways in which this could have broke. In the case of utilizing your number 1 waiver here, with the roster that you currently have, I mean, theoretically you could. I just don't know if it's worth the number 1 waiver if I'm only going to get maybe 1 week out of it, much less, it might not even be 1 week. He might still play because he's a tough son of a gun. Thank you. Jimmy sends in a question, says, thanks for the M. Wilson play. Take going on him rest of season. I mean, here's the reality of the situation, okay? I don't think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be throwing the ball 57 times per game going forward, okay? 47 completions, breaking the NFL record for the most, passing completions by a quarterback in single game history, obviously is incredibly rare to see. Again, he broke the record. So going forward, when Marvin Harrison does come back, I do anticipate to see Marvin Harrison go back to being the number 2 receiving option in this offense. After Trey McBride number 1, it'll be Marvin number 2. But I am hoping that going forward, Michael Wilson has demonstrated enough with the opportunity that he gathered to be maybe an 8 target per game player rest of season. And in the event in which he does find himself with that, again, you got to remember he's the number 2 wide receiver of this offense. And he would be taking on number 2 cornerback coverage rest of the season. And if Brissett was to prefer him on a lot of those opportunities, genuinely could be a great value point at a top 40 capacity rest of way. But in the meanwhile, until Harrison returns, Michael Wilson, a far better player than I anticipated, despite expecting great opportunity in his direction, couldn't believe the volume of success he found with 15 receptions on 18 targets. What a wild game. All right, Possum sends it a question. Says, with how bad the Chargers offensive line is, would you consider all their receivers risky starts with the Chargers' tough schedule moving forward? Well, look, I wouldn't technically say that they're all risky starts. I would still like to assume that Ladd McConkey is going to be, because he's the primary slot receiving option, and his average depth of target is not significantly down the field. I like to assume that he's still going to be in the mix for one of the, still going to be relevant at that capacity. And I would also like to assume that with Keenan Allen's overall opportunity share diminishing over the course of the last couple weeks, he's already kind of phased himself out of being like impactfully relevant like he was earlier in the year. Gadsden, again, pretty much got phased out as well, and so does Quentin Johnston. I mean, Quentin Johnston coming away with a goose egg is absolutely just diabolical, but looking at the upcoming schedule ahead, right? Like Las Vegas, they'll be fine in that Week 13 matchup. I'm not worried about that, but Philadelphia is playing as good of defense as I've seen in a while by a team. I mean, they are really just outperforming and making their offense, they're saving their team with their defensive efforts. Then they have Kansas City, which I'm not worried about. I still think that they'll be a relevant offense in that capacity. Dallas, I'm perfectly fine with. Once you get to Houston, could be a bit of an issue there. But then again, Ladd McConkey is the only one that I'd be really comfortable with. Everybody else, I think, is a little bit sketchier as we kind of slowly progress for the remainder of the season. But I do understand what you're saying. The offensive line is a problem. Herbert can't stay protected. He technically is the most pressured quarterback in the National Football League this season, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of per dropback. He's definitely up there. Let me see what his numbers are at in comparison to the rest of the league. Obviously, they haven't had a bye week yet, so the numbers may be skewed. But if you look on a per-game basis, the volume of pressures that he has had is absolutely ridiculous. Like, he in fact has the most pressures on dropbacks this season. And it is like by 30. It's not even close. But yeah, he's maintained it. He's survived it. I think he'll continue to be just fine. I just got to hope that, of course, they keep a couple chip blocks in there going forward. All right, Supsilly17 says questions in the chat, Andrew. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Says, in a full PPR, do I trade Rashee Rice for Alec Pierce and RJ Harvey? My running backs and wide receivers are Christian McCaffrey, Kyren Williams, Hampton on IR, Olave, Pittman, Flowers, and Allen. Okay, looking at the team as a whole. So with Christian McCaffrey and Kyren as your RB1 and 2, and Kyren Williams scoring, 7 touchdowns in the last 6 games. Christian McCaffrey's an obvious demon taking on the Carolina Panthers this week. Like, he's going to go off again. I feel like you're in a really solid spot at RB, especially with Hampton coming back from the IR, hopefully in week 13. To which, when I look at your wide receiver position, and you do have the potential of Alec Pierce, bringing in theoretically Alec Pierce, I don't know if it's a necessity there, because I truly think that Rashee Rice and what he demonstrated in the first 3 games of his season prior to the bye week, I think that's far more, in my mind, indicative of what he can perform at in terms of consistent levels of production, opportunity, etc. for the remainder of the season. So technically, like, making a trade of which you're moving Rashee Rice, who is technically in a full PPR prior to the bye week, averaging 24 points per game, I feel like his production and stability there, alongside of Michael Pittman Jr., Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, is something that I'm perfectly fine keeping. Again, I would rather have one of the elite players at the singular position rather than going and hoping that Alec Pierce's opportunity share continues to maintain, and hoping that Sean Payton wants to show some love to RJ Harvey rather than hand it off to Jaleel McLaughlin on the goal line. So for now, I'd probably tell you to keep. I think that's the wise choice as of right now. With Olave and Pittman coming back, you're at your all-time strength. Once Hampton comes back, I think you're good to go for the fantasy playoffs there, brother. Thank you. Flotation says, asked a bunch of questions on Cord DM. Okay, let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. Let's fold this up. Here we go. Yeah. When'd you send this? 8:26. Okay, I was gonna say, I didn't think you sent this before. All right. It says, got the dub. Beautiful. Love to see it, brother. Okay, so let's see. Oh man, you have 54 points from Josh Allen flotation. All right. Well, congrats on the win. I mean, that was a squeaky one though. That was absolutely a squeaky one. I mean, you got. I think the biggest kind of luck that was on your side was obviously Dak Prescott not completing that passing touchdown at the end of the game to CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you really squeaked it out there, but hey, we'll take it. Davis Mills obviously been contributing at a really high level for you, and he may in fact be your guy this upcoming week as well, in the event in which we have an opportunity to where, if Stroud's going to be out again and Dart is going to still be in the concussion protocol, you might have to roll Mills again this week, which again is not going to be an issue. But let's see what your questions were as of this week via the Patreon. So it says, here's my upcoming matchup, second picture. I got a few questions, okay? Players that are available are Mac Hollins, Greg Dortch. We have Mitchell as an AD Mitchell. We have Ingram, Sean Tucker, Coker, Tootin, Gordon, Leggett, Van Jefferson, Barner, etc. Can get another defense like the Bills, Niners, Rams, Titans, or Steelers. Okay, Steelers may be the play in this circumstance. Any of these guys I should pick up, and now that I had dropped Ridley, also more droppable. I mean, at this point, yeah, DJ Moore is like, it's getting to the point to where we might need to. I'm worried about the Texans defense going up against Josh Allen, playing the number one guy this week. Yeah. Okay. So here's my thought process on the matter. I think it is a good idea to go pick up a defense. I would specifically like to go pick up that that Steelers defense, since they've moved Kyle Duggar and then subsequently Jalen Ramsey to the safety position. They have been a completely different unit and just been completely locking down teams. So in this regard, obviously you're going to drop Ridley. I think it's a pretty good investment to go pick up the potential of someone like the Steelers defense in order to roll them. But I want to keep the Texans like for the future, obviously, for the remainder of the season. If in this one singular week on a Thursday night against Josh Allen, we want to sit them, that's perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. In terms of the rest of the potential options that you mentioned, I mean, genuinely, we just have to find a way to replace, DJ Moore in this circumstance, which at wide receiver, I guess you could try to accomplish it with the potential of someone like Greg Dortch. If Marvin Harrison was to miss, you could try to do it with Leggett, but that's also very much so potentially fool's gold. I mean, Jalen Coker did have four catches, 50, nothing great there. Matt Collins could be a value, assuming maybe if in fact Kayshon Boutte is out. Those would be the only options there. Otherwise, at that point, you just throw Olave back into the mix and keep whatever you have in there, and that's it. Actually, that is your answer. Never mind, that's your answer. My apologies. Okay, you're good to go there. But yeah, otherwise, I think we should prioritize picking up that Steelers defense this week while dropping Calvin Ridley. Thank you. All right, after flotation, we had Julian who sends in a question. Says, trade Lamar for Stafford and Goddard. Interesting. You want to trade Lamar? I just don't know why you would. I feel like, yeah, he's coming off of a very underwhelming week of 0 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions thrown, no rushing upside. Personally, I wouldn't. I'd rather keep Lamar rest of season, but if you feel so confident to do so, that's got to be your final decision. I'd prefer to keep Lamar there. LZ says, Henderson rest of season rank PPR. I mean, it just purely depends on what the status of Ramondre Stevenson is, right? Like if Ramondre Stevenson is going to come back, and let's say, for example, instead of the normal production of opportunity that we've seen Henderson kind of been exposed to of late, specifically the last 2 weeks here, if he's no longer going to get his 15 to 20 touches per game, if he's not going to be exposed to 15 to 20, where is he going to be in line for? Is he like 10 to 15, 12 to 17? What is the combination? Once we can at least kind of put an identifiable, like, oh, this is how many touches he'll get, then it's a lot easier to understand. Because I can tell you, okay, well, Henderson technically, with the upcoming schedule of Cincinnati, the New York Giants, Buffalo, Baltimore, and the New York Jets, theoretically speaking, if Stevenson doesn't put up a fight in this backfield, Henderson's a top 8 running back rest of the season in a full PPR, if not genuinely better. Again, Cincinnati cannot stop a soul in the running game. Cincinnati's allowed 100 rushing yards by opposing running backs in 9 straight games, guys. The New York Giants can't stop the run either. The Buffalo Bills can't stop any sort of running game capacity. Sean Tucker went for 3 tutties and a hundo. Baltimore's the only tough matchup there. And then you get the New York Jets, again, who he just went for 3 touchdowns against. Theoretically speaking, if Stevenson doesn't come in and start, vulturing tutties, Henderson's top 8 running back rest of the season, and maybe even better in a full PPR because of his receiving upside that he's certainly so capable of accomplishing at. Thank you. Continuing on, we had a question from Michael, who says the following. PPR 7-4 now. I lost. Okay, not a big deal. Team is, let's see here. We have May, Chase, London. That's a problem. Brown, Achan, Gadsden, Rice, Rome Odunze. Bench consisting of Devontae Smith, Myers, Corum, Spears, Benson, Terry, Reed, Tootin. Trade away Chase or London. Who should I pick up? I mean, as of right now, if you could theoretically move London, I feel like that would probably be a good idea. Here's the reality of the situation. Kirk Cousins, I think, is not good for Drake London. I think the loss of Michael Penix is going to really genuinely negatively impact that roster. I mean, earlier this season, the worst game that they have had as an offense this season has been with Kirk Cousins, and it wasn't even remotely close. And I understand that London missed that game. And I think going forward, if London's knee injury is going to be an issue, I think that's something that you might want to try to get rid of off of your team now, while you still have an opportunity to do so. Now, again, people are not going to be as keen on trading for an injured receiver. As for moving Chase, I don't think you need to do that. Again, you're 7-4. You're going to make the playoffs. I'm not worried about your chances of making the playoffs. I'm more or less worried about the health of London, to which you would try to go get, the best available wide receiver, theoretically speaking, out there in exchange for him. But again, you do technically have Rashee Rice, Rome Odunze, London, and Chase. You've got a bunch of incredible wide receivers. It's just a matter of who's going to be out there and available for you to potentially go after in your league. Who wants to be buying London? I don't know if there's going to be anybody. That's got to be something that you have to go after and try to test the waters and see what everybody's heat check is on London and his status. Otherwise, you should keep Chase. It says, who should I pick up? In regards to what? In terms of a waiver wire? You have Devontae Smith as well. I mean, brother, you don't need to pick up anybody. Like, at this point, if you're talking about who am I trading for, I don't know if I can give you a genuine name because I don't know what his status is in terms of how long he's going to miss in terms of Drake London. And I don't know who in your league even wants an injured player right now. Only teams in your league who would probably trade for London are teams that have a better record than you in terms of win-loss. So it's whatever's on their roster potentially available. Thank you. Alrighty, let's see here. Moving on to a question that comes in from Yeet, who says, full PPR, Javonte Williams or Swift for the rest of season? Well, here's the reality of the situation. DeAndre Swift's overall value is going to slightly be diminished rest of season because of the contributions of one Kyle Monangai. It is a two-headed monster, and Kyle Monangai scoring a rushing touchdown in each of the last two games is certainly of a negative impact. Looking at the overall utilization of Javonte, as of this most recent game, obviously it was a greater volume of touches, but obviously not finding the end zone is going to be a little bit of a tough situation for him. Looking at the upcoming schedule, I don't love the matchups. Philadelphia, Kansas City, Detroit, and then you have Minnesota, the Los Angeles Chargers, and then Washington. If you can survive going into the fantasy playoffs, yes, I prefer to have Javonte there. But that's a matter of, can you survive the next 3 weeks of Philly, Kansas City, Detroit? If you can, I really do like the potential of Javonte Williams versus the Vikings, Chargers, and Washington Commanders, if we can afford to do so. Thank you. Boiler2147, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It says full PPR, Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett. Dart are my quarterbacks. Running backs are Bijan, Chase Brown, and Dowdle. Cool. Brian Thomas, Jamison Williams, Alec Pierce, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, Troy Franklin are my wide receivers, and Ferguson is my tight end. I'm 6-5 in a standard league. It's a 1 quarterback, 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 tight end, 1 flex format per weekend. Okay, so where is the question? Everyone from your video earlier today is available. Okay, well, look, here's the reality of the situation. I'm looking at your team as a whole. I don't see a necessity to have to improve upon quarterback because you have 3 studs across the board. And then when we look at the potential of running back, nobody that is available in that video is ever going to play over Bijan, Brown, or Dowdle. Now, theoretically speaking, yes, Dowdle does have an upcoming bye here ahead in week 14, but that's nothing that I am concerned with in terms of your overall potential with a 6-5 record. So really, it's just a matter of like, oh, do we need to improve upon wide receiver? Like as of right now, Jamison Williams may be a wide receiver 1 rest of the way. And Alec Pierce has been playing as a wide receiver 2 easily over the course of last month. And Troy Franklin has just been great consistently as well. So you've got 3 wide receivers that are all fantastic. But if you can go theoretically out there and go pick up Michael Wilson, I don't think it hurts to throw him into the mix while Troy Franklin's out on a bye week this week. I don't think that hurts at all. I think that actually helps your roster a lot. I think the potential of maybe even moving on from Jacoby Myers and looking in the direction, because having 2 Jacksonville Jaguar wide receiver on your team, I don't really love the idea. I'd honestly look to try to pivot away from Jacoby Myers. Let me go pick up a Christian Watson. I have no issues with that at all. In the opportunities in which you could potentially go about expanding there and picking up those players, I'm more than happy to do so. Otherwise, the rest of your roster looks really good and no needs to make any changes. Ferguson's great, quarterbacks are great, running backs are great, wide receivers, even though, yes, these were not the names that we were talking about this summer. Troy Franklin, Alec Pierce, and Jamison Williams, at the extent of where they're going to be contributing to your roster, they're still so damn good right now, it doesn't fucking matter. Diego sends in a question, says, hi, I need a trade advice in a full PPR 1 quarterback league. We've got Josh Allen. My RB1 is Christian McCaffrey. My RB2 is a question mark at the moment. Wide receiver 1 is JSN. Wide receiver 2 is a question mark. Tight end's a question mark. And my flex, which is RB and wide receiver only, still available. And then we have Boswell as the kicker. Falcons as my defense. Bench consisting of Pittman, Bo Nix, Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison, Pittman, again, okay, Higgins. I don't know which Higgins is that. Is that Jaden or T Higgins? I would like to know that. Devontae Smith, Olave, Otten, Kincaid, and JMO. Okay. As of right now, your RB2, I mean, it's pretty much sets itself, right? It can only be Aaron Jones, Diego. I don't see any other running backs on this bench unless there's somebody else here. It says I need 2 running backs. Sorry, I need an RB2. The guy that needs wide receivers are the ones that got Dowdle and K. Williams. What is your advice? Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to absorb all the information that you've just sent in my direction. Okay, hold up. So you need an RB2 because you're not satisfied with the production of Aaron Jones, even though in like a half PPR of late, averaging over 11 fantasy points per game, he's been very, very relevant in terms of his overall contributions over the course of this last 3 weeks here. So since returning, been pretty good in the idea of which you can trade for a Dowdle or Kyron Williams. I mean, again, if they need wide receiver, I feel like you have so much wide receiver depth. Like, obviously, we're not moving JSN off our roster. But in the case of which you do have a Michael Pittman Jr., a Jordan Addison, a T. Higgins, a Devontae Smith, and a Chris Olave, right? These incredible wide receiver groupings. The idea of which you can send, I mean, genuinely 2 for 1, let's do it. I don't mind that. You're playing in a 1 flex double wide receiver league. If they want T. Higgins and if they want, I mean, technically, I'm not giving like Pittman away as of this moment. I would like him to be my wide receiver 2 for rest of season. And then if we look at the potential of specifically rest of the way, upcoming schedules, current usage, I'd like to try to keep T. Higgins as well, because I think the Joe Burrow return is going to be very much so of interest to me. So in the event in which you can manage where it's Addison, Olave, Devontae Smith that are the pieces moving. So theoretically speaking, if I'm going to move Devontae Smith and Olave, I want Kyron Williams back. If I'm going to move either of Devontae Smith and Olave plus Addison, I want Dowdle back. And that's what I would like to do. If you can go pound that, then you can go ahead and bring in your RB2, which is a technical upgrade to Aaron Jones, or you can utilize Aaron Jones in terms of the capacity which you would move him. You would take Aaron Jones and either Devontae Smith or Chris Olave and pair it up to try to get Kyron Williams. You can also go about it that way. But if they need wide receiver and they don't need a running back, in exchange for this trade, then yes, Devontae Smith, Olave would be the play for Kyron, and Addison plus one of these two would be the play for Dowdle, technically speaking, if potentially out there. Oh, I'd also like to keep JMO here. So JMO and, technically Pitts, JMO, with JSN are probably the guys that I like to keep. If Higgins needs to be moved, I'd be okay doing that as well. But, shoot, at this point in a single flex format, JMO I'm genuinely keeping with Pittman and JSN. Those are your top 3 wide receivers rest of the way. Thank you, Diego. Appreciate it. All right, Lateral Movement sends in a question. Thank you very much, Lateral. Says, thoughts on Kenneth Walker for rest of season after the recent game? Do you foresee a possible uptick in the run game / short pass utilization with some of Darnold's recent passing woes? Well, here's the overall situation here. Sam Darnold was forced to have to throw the ball because of the negative game script, which we've recently not been very accustomed to when we watch the Seattle Seahawks play, primarily because, again, they're not throwing the ball, the total volume of attempts. You got to remember last week, Darnold had 12 passing attempts. This most recent game was his season high of 44 passing attempts because of all the turnovers, 4 effing interceptions. They're not going to have that poor of play ever again. My only concern is when they're taking on Tennessee this week, are they going to absolutely mollywop them again to where the starters are, phased out of the situation? Sure, there's always a possibility of that, but listen, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was under the impression that Kenneth Walker would be getting more utilization. Specifically in that Washington Commanders game, I thought that was going to be the opportunity for him to get those rushing opportunities. Unfortunately, did not come to fruition as A.J. Barner stole some rushing touchdowns there. Then last week, I thought, okay, maybe this is the week. And then George Holani, the third-string running back, scores a touchdown. Luckily, this most recent week, obviously, got himself the opportunity. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a report earlier today. I got to see what the overall the verbiage was from the organization. The coaching staff was specifically asked about Kenneth Walker. Let me see if I can find... Where's the report on this matter? Let me go find it. I think I can find it here. I'm probably going to have to... I'll probably mention it tomorrow in the running back rankings video because this is something that it's going to probably take me a while to go find this. But I'm thinking that, yes, there is a good chance. And again, earlier this season, I had a lot of excitement for it, and then it got killed again. And then I got excitement again, and then it got killed again. And I'm worried that maybe, there's a chance that come this week, Charbonnet seals the tutty again, and it's very much so possible. So I don't want to put all my eggs into the K9 basket, but I'm hoping that the upcoming schedule ahead, that I do believe is advantageous, taking on Tennessee, Minnesota, Atlanta, is such a great upcoming schedule for the next 3 weeks. That, again, when you get into the fantasy playoffs and you take on Indy, the LA Rams again, and then Carolina, I feel like Kenneth Walker could really turn around a season, assuming those touchdowns go in his direction going forward. Diego, okay, we already took care of that second half. And then we have Tony Lopez, who sends in a question, says, full PPR, do I trade away ETN for Saquon? In the event in which you can move ETN and bring in Saquon, I'm willing to do so. Again, I do believe that ETN's schedule ahead is incredibly advantageous. But again, the overall opportunity share in which Saquon has been delivered over the course of the last 2 weeks, 25 plus touches in each of those games, eventually he's going to break some runs here. Like, I have a hard time thinking that he's going to continue to be this ass. Again, it's just really just been a really tough season. In the case in which fantasy-wise he continues to blunder, at least he has an incredible schedule for the fantasy playoffs to where even in those games, it would be hard for him to, fall asleep at the wheel. Thinking about his upcoming games here, week 14, the final week of the fantasy playoffs, is like a bounce-back week against the Los Angeles Chargers where they'll run through that defense. Then they get the Vegas Raiders. Then they get the Washington Commanders. Then they get Buffalo. I feel like in every single one of those games, they should run the ball 25 times, and he should find himself a very high level of success purely just off of the matchup itself. Now, matchups aren't everything. The players got to also perform. The offensive line's also got to perform. The defense can play better than they have demonstrated. That's always a possibility. But in this case, I'd be willing to make the move. All right, let's see here. Took care of Tony's question. We move on to Johnny Kilroy says, why won't Minnesota go get a decent quarterback? McCarthy is pathetic. Okay, look, here's the reality, okay? I think it's evident now, after we've all witnessed the last couple weeks of J.J. McCarthy playing football, that unfortunately, earlier this year, the ankle injury that was designated for McCarthy was in fact, like some people speculated, a soft benching. I think that we can all confidently say that that is exactly what occurred. And because of this overall situation, yes, McCarthy has a lot to learn. And he's got a lot, when I say a lot to learn, he needs to learn how to throw the football again. Because the accuracy levels at which he is currently at is not of a professional quarterback. And I guarantee you right now, where's Sam Howell? I thought Sam Howell was on this team. I think he got traded earlier this year, but he was on this team. Where's Sam Howell, NFL? Where does he play? Sam Howell is the backup quarterback for the Eagles. Good on the Eagles. Look, the GM for the Eagles knows what he's doing. If Sam Howell was on this team, I genuinely believe, if he was starting for this team, I'm not joking, I swear the Minnesota Vikings would be number one in the NFC North. It is not difficult to lead this team to success because of how much talent there is around the quarterback position. Shoot, Carson Wentz was looking good sometimes this year prior to him just, his body giving out on him. But yes, McCarthy's just been, he's got a lot to learn. But he's a young player. Let's just hope for the best. Mo Money sends in a question. Mo, what's up? Mo says, question is below. All right, do me a favor and type it in the chat when you get a chance. All right. Ashish George sends in a question. Says, trade Zay and next year's 4th round pick for Jefferson and a 10th round pick in a full PPR triple wide receiver, double running back, double flex format. Record is 9-2. Team is May, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, Pickens, Gibbs, Swift, McBride, Tracy, Keenan Allen, Wanda. Yes, I'd make this trade. Here's the reality of the situation. If you're playing in a league in which is a keeper league or potentially a redraft format to which you can trade future seasons picks, I'm willing to make this trade purely off of this singular designation. Bringing in Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, it gives you a better chance of winning the championship. And if this is the trade that gets it done, then yes, I want to win the chip. You have a 9-2 record. You've got a great-looking team across the board. Shoot, McBride at this current moment is playing at an all-time high. T. Higgins is going to get better when Burrow comes back. Pickens is playing great. Gibbs is playing great. DeAndre Swift is still playing great. Tracy got himself more workload. I'd expect him to get more workload going forward. I don't expect Singletary to steal every tutty going forward. May's been at an all-time best. Again, he's MVP level. Let's make the trade. You have Hampton coming back. I got to sneeze. Bless me, thank me. Okay. Yeah, I'd make this trade. Absolutely. I don't know what kind of a league you're in. You may be in a keeper league or something of that exchange. You may be in a league where it's just a redraft next season. I'm making that trade 10 times out of 10 because I want to try to win a chip this year. And I think Jefferson helps me accomplish that rather than Flowers. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next questions that I'm sure. Oh, actually, we were looking for Mo's question. Needed to type that in. It says deadline is tomorrow. Any 2-for-1 trades I should send for any improvement? We have a 6-5 record and I'm in 10-team full PPR redraft format with double wide receivers, double flex, with Purdy at quarterback, who looked great, might I add. Henry, Judkins, Travion Henderson, Alvin Kamara, Harvey. So genuinely, Henry finally woke back up. Travion Henderson should be absolutely cooking for the rest of the season. I know that Harvey was relatively underwhelming in his first week as a starting running back, but you got to remember, so was Travion Henderson back in week 9 in the first week as his starting, as the full-time starter of that offense. Post-bye week, Harvey should be far better with the absence of Dobbins now in the IR. Alvin Kamara has an incredible schedule for the fantasy football playoffs. If I'm not mistaken, let me go ahead and pull up Kamara's schedule. I mean, obviously, there's nothing that I can hold on to except for this most recent week in which he at least surpassed 110 total all-purpose yards, which is very promising. But for the fantasy playoffs, having Carolina, the Jets, and Tennessee, these are games in which Tyler Shuck can help them be competitive, and they're not going to get blown out. So if they're not going to get blown out, at least there's going to be run going in the direction of Kamara, who can hopefully put together a strong performance late in the year as he's taken a month vacation off recently with games of 6 rushing attempts. What a disaster. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ladd McConkey, Nico Collins, Rome Odunze at wide receiver, Kelsey as your tight end, who's been playing great as of late. I don't know if there's a necessity for you to have to go make a trade. I think there is a conversation to which you could take 2 running backs and go make a 2-for-1, trade, theoretically speaking. You could go find a team in your league who's like, I have Jamar Chase. I cannot afford for him to be on a bye this week. Not on a bye, but technically being, obviously sent on suspension. You could go take Rome Odunze and, I don't know, Ladd McConkey and go send him for, you could. But I don't know if it's a necessity, and I don't think it's smart. I think in this circumstance, double wide receiver, double flex, full PPR, I want the depth. I want to keep depth. Theoretically, you could do it at a far easier rate at a running back, in comparison to wide receiver. You could take Judkins alongside of, AK or Harvey here and go for a running back. That's always a possibility. But ultimately, I mean, it's going to have to be a running back that is, significantly better than the potential of both those combined, which I don't know how many pieces out there are. Maybe there's a possibility in which a team in your league that needs Achane this week but doesn't have him is going to be willing to sell Achane because they need a win now. Maybe you can go after him. Maybe there's a team in your league that, can't afford to lose Waddle this week. I'd be easily moving Rome in order to get him on my roster. Maybe there's those kind of possibilities out there. Otherwise, I don't think there's a necessity to have to move like, oh, I'm going to move Judkins and Harvey and go get ETN. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a slight upgrade there, but ultimately I'd rather just have the depth in case of any other injuries happen rest of the way. Thank you, Mo. Okay. Let me go to the live chat. Let's see what we're up to here. Emmanuel Wilson or Sean Tucker. Depends on the health of everybody. Is Bucky playing? Is Jacobs playing? Considering I don't have the answer to either of those questions, for now, no clue. Again, for now, the expectation is that you would assume that with Bucky practicing last week, there's a higher likelihood of Bucky playing rather than Josh Jacobs, considering the injury and all that is entailed with that. That's my assumption. But again, who knows? Safe to drop Monangai? I don't know why you would drop Monangai. I don't understand. Unless you think you're never going to play him. If that is the overall kind of expectation to which you'll never play him, you could. But otherwise, in the last 2 weeks, in a half PPR, 8.8 and 10.2 fantasy points, he's a solid RB3 there. On many of occasions, I'd be happy to have him on some of my teams. Jonathan sends it a question, says, I'm an 11-0 in a 12-team league. I've got Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Achane, Rico, Henry, T. Higgins, Waddle, Devontae Smith, Goddard, Tyler Loop in the Broncos defense. Browns defense as well with Quentin Johnston, Brian Robinson, and Flacco. Pick up Achane's cuff. Ready for the playoffs? Yeah, I think you should. Picking up Ollie Gordon is probably in your best interest. At 11-0, you're obviously going to have the first round bye. So really at this point, we're just trying to set ourselves up for the fantasy playoffs and the schedule that way we can at least have the best potential performances in weeks 16 and 17. I'm hoping that your league has a first round bye for you because at 11-0, you deserve it at this point. So for now, yeah, I think it is always smart to pick up the HN cuff. I know the HN did get a little bit hobbled in that game, but I'm not too worried about his status. You would just ever do this because, again, you want the insurance policy available to you. Thank you. If you have any other questions, Jonathan, let me know, brother. All right, let's see what else we had here in the live chat. Jacobs gone. Jacobs gone where? He's on vacation. I was offered Devontae and Dart for Kelsey and Dowdle. Should I take it? I think I need more context. What's the league? How many quarterbacks can I start? What's the scoring format? I need, what does your current quarterback look like? I think there's a lot of context that is needed for me to be able to give you an early indication. Because otherwise, I would say, like, if this is the 1 QB league, I mean, why don't I just go pick up, Brissett? Because he's doing, he's working magic at this point. I wouldn't have to lose the RB depth at the moment. But I need more context, truly. Your thoughts on Hurts and Algier rest of season? Sorry, Hunt and Algier. I think even if when Pacheco comes back, Kareem Hunt is still going to be in the mix as a starter. I think he's earned it. So I think as of right now, for those of you who picked up Kareem Hunt, I think you've pretty much kind of solidified your starting, or at least a top 36 running back rest of season in his form. As for Algier for rest of season, again, I think the offense being a little bit more diminished with Kirk Cousins under center could lead them to running the ball more, but everyone's going to be keying in. I mean, as if they don't already key in on stopping the run. If London was going to miss time, you just have to put 8 in the box, maybe 9 in the box, and just, one-on-one cover receivers like Kyle Pitts and Mooney. No one's going to get open because, as long as you bring the pressure every down, Kirk Cousins, who cannot move, who has found himself in a lot of trouble when under pressure, would just fold. So as of right now, Algier very much so dependent on Kirk and what he can do with the offense, which I'm not really excited about. And Hunt, I think, is going to be the starter the rest of the way. Says, who would you roll with going forward, Baker Mayfield or Brissett? Well, I think Baker Mayfield's overall potential is very much so going to be contingent on the health of the players around him. When Bucky Irving returns and Chris Godwin returns and then effectively Mike Evans later on in the year, I think that does elevate the production of Mayfield because he'll finally have a healthy offense surrounding him with all the weapons at his disposal. But until then, I think Brissett, as of right now, it's just kind of an undeniable truth that he is airing it out and he is finding too much success for us to ignore. Alfredo, what's up? Is Watson worth the number 2 waiver in a 3 wide receiver league? I have Puka, Quentin Johnston, Debo, and Michael Wilson. I mean, as of right now, with Debo Samuel going on bye week and Quentin Johnston being as, up and down as a roller coaster could possibly get in this circumstance, I don't mind the idea of making that play. I mean, genuinely, you would play Puka this week with Michael Wilson and Christian Watson, but then Michael Wilson may disappear in a couple weeks' time. You never know. There's a possibility in which when Marvin comes back, he gets ignored. He goes back to only averaging 5 to 6 targets per game, which is obviously incredibly underwhelming in comparison to his most recent week. So, yeah, I think it's worth it just in case. I have Bo and Flacco drop them. I mean, as of right now, I think it's just a matter of, like, who are you going to start at quarterback? Oh, okay, yeah. So you would pretty much, Blue, you'd be trading for Jackson Dart, right? This is the Jackson Dart question from earlier, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. No, that's White. Never mind. This is a different person. Am I dropping Bo Nix? I mean, I don't like his schedule upcoming. I mean, the way that they're playing offensively, it doesn't give me much. It doesn't give me much hope. So if you have a good quarterback rest of the way, I think it's fine. Do I pick up Darnold? Flacco's my current quarterback. Darnold should be fine, but I mean, as of right now, going into this week's matchup, yeah, I'd probably rather have Darnold than Flacco. Trade Jordan Addison for Kenneth Walker? I would. That's fine by me. As long as I'm getting out from underneath the JJ McCarthy situation, I think it's worth it. How many fantasy rings do we have? I don't have any rings, brother. I have championships, and they're all on my Yahoo account, but I don't really have any rings. But I appreciate the question, LZ. I know what you're getting at, but yeah, a lot. Peter says, is it worth to carry a backup QB if your starter had their bye? Would you drop your RB4? I think it depends on who my starting quarterback is. If my starting quarterback, for example, is Josh Allen, then no, I'm not going to carry a second quarterback. If my starting quarterback is Caleb Williams, then yes, I'd be willing to. Because I don't want to have a situation in which I take, let's say, for example, Caleb Williams has a matchup against Denver's defense. I'd be far too afraid to start him, and I would have to be pivoting into a direction to which I would look for that second quarterback to play. So unless you have a quarterback to which like they're matchup proof regardless of situation, yes, I think it is worth rostering a second quarterback in that circumstance. Chorizo, what's up? Says full PPR, Christian McCaffrey, Tedder McMillan, Pickens, Bowers, Hendo, and a playoff team. I mean, as of right now, if Tedder McMillan, who got himself a pretty good usage in the slot position, I mean, in the end of the game, when he's scoring touchdowns because he's being covered by a linebacker, in what world do we have a linebacker trying to cover Tetero, McMillan. Someone's got to explain to me where the heck this Atlanta Falcons defense is going. But I mean, I know where they're going. They're going to Cancun in a couple weeks here. But in regards to Christian McCaffrey, Tetero, McMillan, Pickens, Bowers, Hendo, assuming that Tetero and McMillan can stay consistent, then yes, I think it's a really strong base of a roster in terms of the pillars of your squad. Now, as to what the rest of your team looks like, it says, or is it just a lucky week? I don't think it's just a lucky week. You got to think about the overall potential of production we've seen from Bowers in 2024 and what he could potentially expose to going forward. Pickens has been highly consistent. 3 consecutive weeks of scoring himself, 10 points in 10 plus points in a full PPR. It now begins that the touchdowns are starting to rack in, which again, he's always capable of. And then we have the potential of someone like Tetero and McMillan that again, if given ample opportunity, can succeed. And obviously Hendo and CMC, I've talked, ad nauseum about them. They're fantastic. Streaming quarterback between Brissett and Flacco. Well, eventually Flacco will disappear. So as long as you have somebody else, just in case Brissett, anything happens to him, maybe you go get Burrow, something like that could be a play in which you can go ahead and secure yourself some wins in the playoffs and maybe hopefully a championship. Scott says I'm 8-3 with non-PPR. Would you trade Watson for BTJ with a 3-8 team who I play this upcoming week? Trey Tucker and Myers are my other flex options for week 12. Would I trade Christian Watson for Brian Thomas Jr.? I think it's a really good question, primarily because Brian Thomas, again, we know he's got talent. He's just not getting the appropriate volume. Look, the upcoming schedule for this team, I think is okay. I don't love the fantasy playoff schedule for Brian Thomas Jr. in specific, because once you get there, specifically like when we're talking about week 14 and beyond, week 14 immediately get Sauce Gardner. Week 15, they get the Jets defense, which again, they'll probably just run the ball 40 times against them and win. Then week 16, he has, unfortunately, Pat Surtain. Then week 17 has Sauce Gardner again. That's my issue. I think the cornerback coverage for Brian Thomas Jr. leads this offense to probably peppering Parker Washington, potentially Brenton Strange at a far greater rate in those games, which again, I think as of now, with the injury and all this, I think I just keep Watson genuinely. I don't think I want to buy in on BTJ. I think it could be a mistake, but I just don't love the matchups. They're legitimately, frightening. Okay, let's see here. Emily Doyle sends in a question. Emily, thank you very much. Says, would you consider Hurts to be matchup proof? That's a really good question. I would say he is. I mean, to an extent, right? When he plays at home, Jalen Hurts is a better quarterback. So on the road, I mean, it really just depends. Like, how many road games does he have in the fantasy playoffs? He's got 2 road games against Washington, Buffalo, but he has Las Vegas. Would I say he's matchup proof? In the past, I would have said immediate. I wouldn't have even questioned it. I would have said yes. But this current iteration of this offense, as it currently stands, I would say that the upcoming matchups that he has doesn't scare me. Like, he's taken on Denver this season. He's taken on Minnesota this season. He's taken on those heavy blitz teams, and he's able to at least find a solid semblance of success against both of them. So, ultimately, with the upcoming schedule of Dallas, Chicago, the Chargers, Las Vegas, Washington, Buffalo, nothing there scares me. To which, in this circumstance, for rest of season, I do think he's matchup proof. Thank you, Emily. Okay, let's see here. Is Jerry Jeudy still relevant? I don't know who Jerry Jeudy is. I'm just kidding. Is he still relevant? Brother, I mean, if Shadur Sanders can bring him back to life, please and thank you, that'd be great. But Shadur's too busy going 4 for 14. Like, it just 4 for 4. I mean, you might as, geez. It was rough. It was rough. I hope he's relevant, but man, I don't think so. Stash Saints defense. They get Carolina, Jets, Titans. Yeah, Saints and Tampa Bay's defense got the best fantasy playoff schedule. Talent-wise, is Jefferson better than Lamb? Yes. Pierce over Dobbs. Yeah, that's no questions asked. Alec Pierce 10 times out of 10 over Romeo Dobbs. Romeo Dobbs has disappeared in the last month. I don't know where he went, but someone needs to get him back. Alec Pierce or Dobbs. Yeah, so we're absolutely going Pierce there. Thank you. White says, for the Adams and Dart question, I have Caleb Williams as my quarterback in a full PPR, 1 quarterback league, and also have Christian McCaffrey and Swift as running back, and I'm 10-1. Don't like how Christian McCaffrey and Dowdle both have week 14 bye and need wide receiver depth. Well, hold on. Wait. What does Christian McCaffrey and Dowdle week 14 bye have to do with anything, brother? You're 10-1. So week 14 is still the final week of the regular season for fantasy football. So your playoffs shouldn't start till week 15. If your playoffs, which I'm getting worried for you. Your playoffs better not start in week 14. If they do, you got to tell your commissioner to change that at this current moment and you can send them my way. Tell them to come to my DMs. I will let them know they need to change it because it makes no sense in which to start that. I've seen it though. I've seen ESPN leagues default start of week 14, which should be arrestable. You should be able to put people in jail for that. Now, in regards to the potential of this question, moving players like Rico Dowdle, and who was the other player here? Let me go ahead and I'll pull up your Kelsey and Dowdle in order to bring in Devontae and Dart. You have Swift and you have So here's my concern with this trade, okay? As in a vacuum, I'm going to probably say no, I don't want this trade. And this is why. Jackson Dart just sustained a concussion. In the event in which he sustains another one, he's out for the season. In the event in which he stops running the ball, his value is diminished and probably completely cut in half. If Jackson Dart doesn't go back to running the ball at the rate at which he was, that is my biggest concern. To which, yes, if he goes back to running the ball to where he's scoring a rushing touchdown every game like he did to start this season as the starter of this team, then yes, I would be willing to make this trade because the volume of upgrade he is in comparison to Caleb. But for now, I think there's just a little bit of sketchiness that is revolving around that I'm just not interested in. All right, how long have we been here for? Let me just make sure. Okay. So we've been here for about 59 minutes and 32, 33, 34 seconds. I'm going to answer a couple more questions and we're going to head out. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel again. For those of you guys who are just joining us right now, again, yes, I'm closing out today's live stream. I did post my waiver wire pickups earlier today via video. I'll be back tomorrow with my top 36 running back rankings, but I'll also be live streaming tomorrow night. So if we have any other waiver questions, once we get a little bit more clarity regarding Josh Jacobs, Drake London, and all of the injuries that have taken place in week 11 going into week 12, I think we'll get a better indication as to where we're going with our waiver prioritization. Daniel Gonzalez says, Andrew, number one waiver wire. I own Bucky Irving. Would you still go for Wilson or Sean Tucker? In this case, you probably are in a better position to go after Sean Tucker because if anything was to happen to Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker is going to be the starter of that offense going forward. Should I sell high on Pickens? I mean, if you're going to sell high on Pickens, what are you going to sell him for? That's got to be the only question that I want to know. Otherwise, I mean, the upcoming schedule ahead for this Dallas Cowboys offense should consist of a lot of shootouts. I understand this upcoming week, not going to be fun, especially taking on, Quinyon Mitchell, but I still think he could find himself success in that matchup. Earlier this season, a lot of defensive pass interferences. If he didn't have those catch up onto him, he would have had himself a fantastic week in week one. But in terms of the upcoming schedule ahead, I look towards the fantasy playoffs and I think to myself, Minnesota, Los Angeles Chargers, Washington. I mean, I'd like to keep, Pickens on my team in those circumstances. Alex Ruiz says, in a rest of season and then week 12, May or Hurts. Okay, so in terms of both these quarterbacks, I think let's see week 12 is. So week 12, we have taking on Cincinnati and taking on Dallas. I personally would like to play Drake May versus Cincinnati. And I'd also like to have Drake May as my starting quarterback for the rest of the season. So in both scenarios, I'd like to have Drake May, genuinely. Pittman over BTJ every week. It's not even close. I don't understand where that came from. Pittman or BTJ next week? Yeah. Pittman has to play every week rest of the season. He is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. BTJ is so outside of the convo. Coming off the injury, we cannot trust him. Trade JMO for Pittman and Chase Brown. I mean, at this point, I feel like, yes, you theoretically could trade JMO for Pittman, but I think their value is almost going to be identical going forward. And the only reason you would ever trade it for Chase Brown is if you're super desperate for a running back. Kaiser says, congratulations, birthday boy. Go to 5-6, 10-team full PPR. This is my team. Would you trade CD for a 2-for-1? Also, is ETN sell high? ETN could be sell high depending on what the overall status of Bayshaw Tutin's injury was. We'll get a better idea of that tomorrow, but ETN could be a sell high considering, again, the overall contributions of what we have seen from Bayshaw this most recent week. Now, in regards to moving CD 2-for-1, you could, but looking at your team, I mean, you don't need to. You can start CeeDee Lamb and Pickens every week rest of the season and be pretty good with the overall contributions that they're going to provide. So I'm happy with having both on roster, genuinely. Maddie says, with Darnold's performance, should I sit him and play a streamer in a second QB? We have Dak, Dart, and Nix. I mean, 2 QB league, if you have these available options, I mean, Dak and Dart would probably be better plays in this circumstance. George Kiggins was cooking tonight, baby. Yeah, I mean, he was beyond cooking, brother. He was beyond cooking. So, yeah, if you're going to sell him high, you better get a pretty good receiver in return because genuinely, I think rest of season, he's a top 15 wide receiver minimum, considering his consistency. Really, you value him that high over Chase Brown and Pittman? I mean, yeah, Jameson Williams without Sam Laporta for the next 4 weeks has so much effing potential that, yes, he is. I mean, just the offense itself is going to be cooking. And when they have those opportunities now going to JMO exclusively, it's just going to be great. Lateral movement says, hoping Stevenson sits at least one more week so Henderson goes for 300 yards against the Bengals. Are we worried about Jaylen Warren? Yeah, listen, Jaylen Warren's injury is a little bit concerning. Again, we'll keep an eye on that. I don't know if he's going to miss significant time or what the deal is. Again, very much so waiting for a lot of the injury speculation and, of course, for players and coaches to talk to the media tomorrow so we can get a better idea. But for right now, we're hoping that he'll be okay. But obviously, Kenneth Gainwell, if in fact available in your league, earlier today when I was looking at waiver wire pickups and potentially putting together the script for today's episode, Kenneth Gainwell was rostered in more than 50% of leagues on Sleeper. So I was like, okay, he probably doesn't need to be mentioned at that point. So if he is available and you are a Warren manager, probably need to pick him up. White or Harvey? I don't understand that question. That doesn't make sense to me, Blue. Because Rashad White is, Harvey's on a bye this week and White is pretty much done. So you'd go for Sean Tucker instead. Nice guy says, if you're going to use JMO on underneath crossers and mesh concepts, he's a must start. Yeah, exactly. Because his ability after the catch is so significant. Jay McLaughlin says, who returns first, Omarion Hampton or Trey Benson? And who has more value for rest of season? Okay, first and foremost, Omarion Hampton has more value rest of season. Who returns first? I'm assuming that's also Omarion Hampton. Thank you. Is Nico cooked when Stroud comes back? That's a really good question. I hope not. I think Stroud is a good enough quarterback, but I hope not. I hope that is not the case. Is Chutin's usage worrisome for ETN? Yes, I think it is a little bit worrisome. It's worrisome because, again, if there's another threat in the backfield to take goal line touches, that's wherein lies the issue with his potential of getting a little bit of his value sapped away on a weekly basis. Otherwise, having another running back in the mix, taking away touches, isn't the worst thing because, again, it'll keep ETN fresh and healthy for the remainder of the season. All right, guys, that's going to cover for me today. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel as you guys typically do, whether it is via just watching the videos, clicking the like button down below, subscribing to the channel, being a friend, and telling a friend as we are on our one day at a time, one step closer to achieving the goal of 100,000 subscribers this season. Again, thank you everybody for watching. Again, if you guys want to go ahead and get questions answered or get my rankings every single Sunday for the remainder of the season, of course, getting those rankings can be done via Betr by signing up using code Andrew, making that first time deposit, and of course, making that first time play. All you have to do is make sure you're eligible via the map at the right side of the screen, and of course, follow the instructions that are detailed down in the description of the video. Otherwise, you can go ahead and ask me questions and get those same exact rankings via the Patreon. There's also a link down in the description for those of you guys who want rankings every Thursday and Sunday, and additionally, want to get your questions answered on an individual basis. I appreciate y'all coming through. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cue the double helix. Have a great rest of your Monday night. I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.